Welcome to the Ed Leaders Edge podcast, where we interview innovators and thought leaders in the field of education who are helping students thrive. I'm your host, Ed Madison. I'm a professor and researcher at the University of Oregon, an educational consultant, and serve as executive director of the Journalistic Learning Initiative, a nonprofit organization that empowers elementary, middle, and high school students to discover their voice, improve academic outcomes, and become self-directed learners through project-based storytelling. Welcome to our program.
Well, welcome back to the podcast. Patrick McQueenie is superintendent of the Wanaque Borough School District in Haskell, New Jersey. He's a seasoned educational leader with more than 20 years of experience dedicated to enhancing student achievement and fostering professional growth among administrators and teachers. And more recently, he's been focused on increasing resources for students struggling with mental health in his district. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
Yeah. This question of mental health and stress and anxiety and even worse with our students, we're hearing so much about. Tell me what you're observing and how you're addressing it in your district.
Sure. We're seeing just atypical behaviors of students that are for things not really considered mental health issues, but really centered around the ability to resolve conflicts, to interact with one another, just basic human, emotions and things. So we're seeing a lot in our younger students, difficulty relating to other students, difficulty accepting negative consequences if that's just a no, or if something wasn't done to their liking. And we're finding that a lot of these things that we had taken for granted that were coming from the home are now we have to explicitly teach. So you see a lot more in the classroom beyond the social emotional learning curriculum that many districts have. We have to talk about what it means to be a friend and how we speak to people and, teach empathy in students so that they understand that their actions and words have consequences. And it's far beyond just the acceptance of each other. It's just human interaction sometimes that they struggle with.
And do you think a lot of this is because of a 2-year gap in just social interaction that, that took place, during COVID, or do you see it as maybe deeper than that?
No, I think it's deeper than that. I think that the COVID, the pandemic, and the experience that we all shared in that exacerbated. And, a lot of times there's a famous saying in education, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. I think parents and adults have struggled for a number of years in an increasing technology society where you can have keyboard muscles or be on the other side of a screen, have really eroded adults' ability to interact with one another. And, if you want to do a case study, we can look at current and recent political climates. There's just not a civil discourse anymore. There's not an acceptance of other ideas, and not saying that you agree with those ideas, but just to accept that there could be other ideas. And I think it's been a slow burn for a number of years since we've gotten further and further down a technological pathway. And then COVID really exacerbated that, where parents couldn't send their children to school and then would see it and not be able to deal with it themselves. And if they can't deal with it, then how are we expected their children to look? Where is it going to come from? How are they going to learn it and be able to do it? So I think the COVID just kind of tipped the scales. I think it's been going for a number of years, and now we're really seeing the impact that it's had on our adults and our children.
So how do you teach empathy? What are some of the strategies that some of your teachers are using?
Well, I think it's just being intentional. I don't think there's any, magic pill. I think it's being intentional and really the professional development that we've worked with our staff is not so much a formal program as it is just understanding where our students are, and that, yes, this is something that we do have to take time and be intentional about to say, hey, Ed, do you see what you said hurt Patrick's feelings? Or those types of things where in the past, we may not have thought it was our job, 20, 30 years. Increasingly, education has become kind of that social lens that we clean up for everything that's missing for our students. But now they're seeing that we have to do the basics of this is what you need to do. And when there are negative behaviors in classrooms, teachers need to take the time not just to consequence it, but to also provide that understanding and teaching moment of this is why this is important and this is how we do it. So it's not so much PD or special strategies that we have. It's more of a recognition that this is what our students need and it's important and we need to take time to do it.
We're seeing how this is also taking a toll on our teachers with more leaving the profession. We're hearing about shortages all over the country. How can we support our teachers in having what's the word? Coping skills, but also the ability to kind of just see through this period that we're in?
Well, I think that this is to kind of connect the two questions. We talked about children struggling, and then I would extrapolate that to adults, but our teachers are adults in their professional life and our personal lives, And, many, just kind of casting a very wide net here, but adults in general struggle with human interactions and emotions. And then on top of that, the eroding respect for the educators in general, these two things clash together, not just come together, but clash together. So we are seeing a very high number of our educators, their work is being impacted by their personal lives and things outside of education. I just had a meeting this morning with our association president, and she said, I don't know what it is, but there's more outside coming into schools these days. I think we have to take ownership of some of it and earn back the respect for our craft and what we do. And I think we need to be champions for ourselves. And as administrators, we need to recognize that it's difficult, not just teaching, but life is difficult. And how do we help our staff balance that and give them the grace to balance that? I think that comes in a lot of different ways that we approach conversations with our staff. For instance, we had a situation come up this morning where one of our administrators had evaluated a teacher, and it's a great teacher, very engaging with the students, very high level of differentiation. And the administrator went in last week and it wasn't there at all. Like, it wasn't just a bad day. It wasn't there, period. Now, administrators have two choices. Do we just evaluate that and say, that was terrible and here's your scores and here's your evaluation? Or do we take the human approach and say, hey, that's not you. What do you need? What can we do? How do we improve this? And I think, we're all busy, administrators included. And, we want to just, evaluation, check, move on, go to the next. But again, it's that being intentional and taking the time because it's important, because they are our educators, they are people, and they need our support. So we took that human approach with him, and hopefully we're able to get him the support he needs and, get a redo on that evaluation. That's not the end all be all. The person is more important because we know our educators in the classroom are the number one tool that we have to impact good teaching and learning.
Mm-hmm. Let me widen the scope a little bit in terms of, because you somewhat touched on this, is that there's a sort of a pervasive conversation about public education that questions whether it's moving in the right direction. And maybe that's always gone on, but I think more so since the period of COVID, where parents were, in a sense, over the shoulders of their kids and observing what was going on. In some cases, they didn't like what they saw. And so we've seen a lot more vocalizing about just public education. And then also, as it relates to, in many communities, just the charter school movement and vouchers are depleting budgets and making it more difficult for our public schools to do the job that they're intended to do. And I'm just curious if you have thoughts about how we impact that negative sort of narrative about public education as an institution.
Let's step away from our conversation for a moment for me to tell you about the Journalistic Learning Initiative's innovative educational tools and services. Of special note is JLI's Comfort Corner initiative, a video library featuring near-peer role models sharing about their mental health journeys. This innovative resource destigmatizes mental health challenges, provides a gateway to seeking professional help, and supports your students in realizing they're not alone. If you're looking to make the best decision for your teaching staff and students about AI adoption, improving student engagement, strengthening writing skills, promoting social media mindfulness, or enhancing college and career readiness, please take a moment to visit our website at journalisticlearning.org. Our team of University of Oregon researchers offer customized AI tools, instructional materials, professional development, and consulting. Research confirms that students with journalistic learning experience outperform their peers on numerous key indicators for college and career readiness. At the heart of our work is empowering learners to become effective communicators. If you think about it, effective communication is critical in every human interaction, whether it's writing an essay for a grade or being interviewed to secure employment. Since 2015, JLI has benefited nearly 20,000 students and served schools in 15 states and the District of Columbia. I invite you to schedule an appointment to explore how JLI can improve your students' learning outcomes. Now back to our program.
Well, I think part of it is returning to public education. I think for too long we've gotten to a comfortable point where, as educators, we're all people. We have beliefs, political, religious, what have you. But we've gotten away, we've allowed that to impact our education. And really, educating of a child is a very apolitical thing. We need to grow in their knowledge and their abilities, but being a good person is not a political thing. And unfortunately, as educators, I think we have become too accustomed to be able to say that we're the expert in the classroom and that we can't be criticized. And I think we can. I think, we need to focus on doing a better job of educating our students and educating not in what we think they should be educated, but in what they really need, which is the basic understanding of the curriculum, the problem solving skills, and just the human interaction getting together with each other. Unfortunately, I think the media has taken some isolated incidents across the country and in many different places of poor behavior by educators and extrapolated that out to the masses. And that's just not the fact. I think we need to do a better job of highlighting great education across the country. Those don't make the news. The ones where they talk about some crazy, situation in the classroom, they always make the news and then flavors everybody's view of it. And I think we need to really focus on teaching and learning and getting it back in the hands of trained educators of what's important in the classroom. Certainly assessments are something that is important so that we know where our students at, but our students come from a wide variety of backgrounds and they're not all brought to the table with the same resources, tools, skills, knowledge, and experiences, but they're all measured by the same measuring stick. That can be unfair to students. And I think we need to make sure we maintain high expectations, but get back to teaching and learning for each student, not in a factory manufacturing one-size-fits-all approach. Until we're ready to do that, we may not be able to move past some of the negative connotations, but there's a lot of educators out there that we need to amplify their voice to champion public education.
Yes, we've had a number of decades of emphasis on high stakes testing, but I am seeing more of a move towards looking at more formative assessments, giving students opportunities to show growth, to explain how they arrived at certain answers. And I guess a move towards an effort to get away from that sort of industrial model to more of an individualized way of looking at young people and how they're doing. Let me ask you about AI, and because that is potentially a way in which more individualized instruction can happen. You have thoughts about that?
No, AI, I think, is really that key. We talk about wanting to reach all, and as you had alluded to with the vouchers and charter schools, and the drain on the budgets for public education, to be able to individualize for every student should be the goal of every district, school, and classroom. We should be looking to get each individual child material presented in a way that works for them, in a language that works for them, in modified way for works for them. And in the past, that's taken additional teachers. We need to add additional special education teachers, multilingual services, whatever the case might be. Now, with the advent of AI, we're able to differentiate in many different languages at different levels, provide feedback in real time for students. And we really have a very, very powerful tool that needs to be taken into account that power as it could relate to some damaging or negative consequences. So I think we're in an area right now, I'm sure this goes back and many people listening will remember, or especially if you're a math teacher, when that new device, the calculator, came out and nobody's ever going to know how to add again. And, what are we doing? We're kind of in one of those time periods where AI is a great tool. And sure, a student could cheat on a math test if you allow them to use the calculator all the time. But I keep going back to this word, the intentionality. What skills are you teaching and what tools can you provide them that are not going to take away from that intended lesson? If you want somebody to know their math facts, well, then, yeah, you're not going to give them a calculator. But if you need them to solve a multi-step problem and show the logic in their thought, well, the calculations is not the focus on that, and give them a calculator to allow them to get there. AI can do.
I was going to say we're having this same conversation at the college level with undergraduates, and I think it's as much a values conversation as it is just the application, meaning that for particularly college level, parents and students are making investment of their time and their money, and in many cases at great expense, and loans and everything else. And if they're choosing to be there to learn and develop, that's one thing. If they're choosing to just sort of check the boxes and just get out, that's another. And so we're always going to have that as a sort of balance of conversation about balance. Yeah.
Sure.
I am curious, just what are the things that you are focused on other than what we've talked about in your district?
I think we're just focused every day. We're in a unique position where every day or every year is a different year. And you were constantly seeing students come in with different challenges, and challenges might not be struggles in terms of they're not succeeding, but how do we take our top students and, expand them and have them grow beyond where they are? It's if we focus on our kids, that's always my constant focus. How can we do better? How can we individualize, and how can we provide the environment that all of our students need to excel? And that's a constant struggle when you bring in the factors coming in from outside, whether it be in the home or in society. Wanaque is one of the districts in New Jersey that there was legislation passed a number of years ago with respect to school funding, where we lost over $4.5 million over a 7-year time period. It was quite a big hit. And we were one of many districts in the state, based on funding formulas and adequacy numbers. And, the challenge for me is how do we continue to maintain a high level of instruction for our students, but we also have a responsibility to taxpayers and budgets. So it's kind of, turning magic tricks sometimes and trying to be creative and innovative with how we do that. To meet the changing needs of our kids. But, we touched on AI. AI is going to be a big piece of it. The continuing struggle against mental health or human interactions, we still see our numbers are growing, but we still see the academic impact of COVID and the virtual learning and what that's been like for our students. We have our students, all of our students in school now, we're able to really focus in on what they need and how do we get there. So it's just, for me, I try not to focus on any one thing because each year it's something unique and it's something that our students need and it's what our staff needs. So it's kind of an all-encompassing, mantra of anything our students need, all students, to get them to where they need to be.
Thank you, Dr. Patrick McQueenie. Let people know where they can find you and your school district on the internet or through LinkedIn.
Sure. No, I'm on LinkedIn, Patrick McQueenie. Our website for Wanaque is www.wanaqueps.org, and certainly you can find my contact information there. And I'm happy to chat with any listeners about ideas, tips, or strategies so that we're all working in the same direction for our students.
Terrific. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
The Ed Leader's Edge podcast is produced by the Journalistic Learning Initiative. Please check out our latest books, Language Arts in Action from W.W. Norton Publishing, and Raising Empowered Learners from Rauman and Littlefield. For more information about our work, please visit journalisticlearning.org or edleaderedge.org. Thanks for listening.